print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Sunday, February 1st. Your reader for this hour will be Edwin J. Vieira, and for the second hour, your reader will be Ron Bickelman. First, a look at the weather. Mostly cloudy and bitterly cold today, a high of 16. It'll be clear and cold tonight with a low of 5. Cold tomorrow with clouds and sun to start off the work week and a high of 21 with a low of 15. Tuesday, some flurries in the morning, otherwise low clouds and a high of 26 and a low of 12. Wednesday, in the middle of the week, cold with low clouds and a high of 20 with a low of 11. Thursday, we see more of the same, cold with low clouds and a high of 20 and a low of 12. But Friday, we see the temperatures dip again, cloudy and afternoon snow as well, with a high of 23 and a low of 4. A bit of morning snow in the later part of the weekend on Saturday, with a high of 13 and a low of 0. And now, on to our first story. Tuesday's vote pits Zellner, Gagliardo. Winner will fill Ryan's former Senate seat. Dan Gagliardo owns 3 DeValo restaurants and most recently ran as the Republican candidate for Amherst Town Supervisor. Jeremy Zellner leads Erie County's Democratic Party and until recently served as a county board of elections commissioner. On Tuesday night, one of the men will add a new identity. Senator representing the state's 61st Senate District. They face off in a special election to determine the successor to now Buffalo Mayor Sean Ryan, a Democrat who held the Senate seat since 2021. The district, entirely in Erie County, includes parts of Buffalo as well as the city and town of Tonawanda, Amherst, and Grand Island, and the villages of Kenmore and Williamsville. If Zellner wins Tuesday, his campaign will not be over. He would face a June primary from Assembly member Jonathan Rivera. If he wins the primary, he would have to run again in November for a chance to win a full 2-year term. Residents of the district have been inundated in recent weeks with campaign mailers and advertisements. In one social media ad, Gagliardo spoke with employees, dropped cheese on pizza dough, and talked of bringing a better recipe for Western New York. A Zellner ad featured his 2 young children discussing their dad's accomplishments and his father and grandfather's employment at the General Motors plant in Tonawanda. It showed Zellner serve his wife and kids breakfast and meet with district residents he said he wants to serve in Albany. Tuesday's winner will be thrust into a legislative session already in progress. On January 20th, Governor Kathy Hochul proposed a $260 billion executive budget. A joint legislative panel started conducting hearings on the spending plan last week, and in June, when the session ends, a primary will be held. Assemblymember Jonathan Rivera, Democrat of Buffalo, is already challenging Zellner, and the seat is up again in November. The winner will be elected to a 2-year term. Among active 61st District voters, Democrats and Working Families Party members collectively outnumber Republicans and Conservatives at 94,586 to 54,399. Another 56,595 active voters are either unaffiliated or belong to other parties. Early voting began January 24th and will conclude on Tuesday. Gagliardo, a former Democrat who switched his affiliation before his campaign for supervisor, said he could appeal to voters across party lines. While campaigning against now Supervisor Sean Lavin, a Democrat Gagliardo said he learned just how similar district voters are regardless of their political stripes. In my business, in all businesses, nobody ever asks what your party affiliation is, said Gagliardo, who owns 2 restaurants in Williamsville and a 3rd in East Amherst, adding that he would embrace that same philosophy as state senator. In addition to his restaurants, a retail store, and Gagliardo Distribution, which makes food products for corporate clients, Gagliardo serves on the board of Independent Health in Amherst. We can't blame Donald Trump for everything, right? And we can't blame Kathy Hochul for everything, he said. What we have to do is we have to get past those, I'm this, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, it's just ridiculous. And the people don't like it. If elected, Gagliardo, age 62, a married father of 4 children and the grandfather of 6, said he would work to lower the cost of living, crime, health care costs, and waste, fraud, and abuse in health insurance. He said he would introduce a bill to offer $5,000 tax breaks to encourage citizens to become volunteer firefighters. Zellner, age 47, of the city of Tonawanda, said that since last summer he has spoken to hundreds of voters. His chief concern, he said, is the cost of everyday life, whether it's health insurance, car insurance, child care, utilities, or basic necessities. Working families are feeling the pinch. Fixing the affordability crisis will be my laser focus in the Senate, Zellner said. But beyond the kitchen table issues, it's clear that more and more Americans, regardless of party or Senate district, are deeply troubled by the Trump administration's disregard for the Constitution and common decency, and scared for the future of our democracy. Zellner said the killings in Minneapolis of Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy, both age 37, at the hands of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement have shined a spotlight on Trump's lies and the damage he's doing daily to our country, adding, quote, I believe every elected official at every level of government must do what they can to hold the president and MAGA Republicans accountable. Democrats control both houses of the state legislature, what makes it all but impossible for Republicans to sponsor bills that become laws with the exception of parochial bills to rename highways or authorize local tax increases. Gagliardo said he was unconcerned about serving in the minority. At a forum last week sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Buffalo Niagara, Zellner said that given the region's desperate need for budget money, it would not make sense to elect a lawmaker who would serve in the minority. We need every ounce of support we can get from the state of New York, and if you're going to and it's not going to happen if you elect a Republican, Zellner said. The race is one of 4 special elections across the state Tuesday for seats in the legislature. The New York State Democratic Committee spent $106,179 on campaign mailings from the Manhattan-based Threshold Group on Zellner's behalf in January. The New York Republican State Committee spent $25,919 on Gagliardo in early December, according to the most recent State Board of Elections records. It showed that the party had spent a combined $37,553 at Orefo Printing and Imaging, Inc. into Pew and marketing technologies of Western New York and Buffalo, but the expenses did not include the name of a candidate. The filings show that Zellner's campaign has spent $238,548, while Gagliardo's campaign has spent $3,876. But the final expenditures by the campaigns and the state parties could prove to be far higher when post-election campaign filings are released in early March. The state's Public Campaign Finance Board approved Zellner for $321,901 and Gagliardo for $175,304 in matching funds. Trump moves quick to cut New Deal on funding. President Trump moved quickly this past week to negotiate with Democrats to try and avert a lengthy government shutdown over Department of Homeland Security funding, a sharp departure from last year's record standoff when he refused to budge for weeks. Some Republicans are frustrated with the deal, raising the possible of a prolonged shutdown fight when the House returns Monday to vote on the funding package. But Trump's sway over the GOP remains considerable, and he has made the position clear at a moment of mounting political strain. The only thing that can slow our country down is another long and damaging government shutdown, Trump wrote on social media late Thursday. The urgency marked a clear shift from Trump's posture last year during the 43-day government shutdown when he publicly antagonized Democratic leaders and his team mocked them on social media. This time, with anger rising over the shootings in Minneapolis and the GOP's midterm messaging on tax cuts drowned out by controversy, Trump acted quickly to make a deal with Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer of New York. Trump and the Republicans know that this is an issue where they're on the wrong side of the American people, and it really matters, said Schumer to reporters on Friday after the Senate passage of the government funding deal. Minneapolis killings. Senators returned to work this past week, dealing with the fallout from the fatal shooting of ICU nurse Alex Preddy in Minneapolis by federal immigration officers, as well as the killing of Renee Good in the city weeks earlier. Republicans were far from unified in their response. A few called for the firing of top administration officials, such as Homeland Security Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller, the White House Chief of Staff for Policy. Most GOP senators tried to strike a balance, calling for a thorough investigation into Preddy's killing while backing the hardline immigration approach that is central to the Trump presidency. But many agreed that the shootings threatened public support for Trump's immigration agenda. I've never seen a political party take its best issue and turn it into the worst issue in the period of time that it has taken in the last few weeks, said Senator John Kennedy, Republican of Louisiana. Some things have to change. Democrats quickly coalesced around their key demands. Senator Chris Coons, Democrat of Delaware, said, quote, there was unanimity around core principles of enforcing the code of conduct for immigration officers and agents, ending roving patrols for immigration enforcement actions, and coordinating with local law enforcement on immigration arrests. It helped that Trump himself was looking for ways to de-escalate in Minneapolis. The world has seen the videos and those horrible abuses by DHS and rogue operations catching up innocent people, and there's a revulsion about it, said Senator Tim Kaine, Democrat of Virginia. The White House is asking for a ladder off the ledge, he added. Avoiding painful politics. Republicans are also trying to promote their accomplishments in office as they ready for the November elections and the difficult task of retaining control of both chambers of Congress. But the prospect of a prolonged shutdown shifted attention away from their $4.5 trillion tax and spending cuts law, the centerpiece of their agenda. Republicans had hoped the beginning of this year's tax season on Monday would provide a political boost as voters began to see larger tax refunds. Republicans are also mindful of the political damage from last year's shutdown when they took a slightly larger portion of the blame from Americans than Democrats, according to polling from the Associated Press Newark Center for Public Affairs Research. The shutdown was a big factor, negative for the Republicans, Trump told Republican senators at the White House on November. On a practical level, this funding standoff threatened to destroy months of bipartisan work, including long hours over the holiday break to craft the 12 spending bills that fund the government and many priorities back home. We saw what happened in the last government shutdown in regards to how it hurt real hard-working Americans, said Senator Katie Britt, Republican of Alabama, a member of the Senate Appropriations Committee. I don't want that to happen again. The funding battle begins. The agreement reached this past week, if passed by the House, would avoid a prolonged shutdown and fund nearly every federal department through the end of the budget year in September. But it would not resolve one of the most difficult issues for Congress and the White House, DHS funding. Instead of a full-year deal, funding for the department was extended by just 2 weeks, giving lawmakers little time to bridge the deep divides over immigration enforcement. Democrats are pressing for changes they say are necessary to prevent future abuses, including requiring immigration agents to wear body cameras, carry clear identification, and end roving patrols in cities and coordinate more closely with local law enforcement when making arrests. Many Democrats also want tighter rules around warrants and accountability mechanisms for officers in the field. Those demands have met stiff resistance from Republicans. Some are opposed to negotiating with Democrats at all. Republicans control the White House, the Senate, and the House. Why are we giving an inch to Democrats? Said Senator Tommy Tuberville, Republican of Alabama, who wrote on social media. Republican senators said they would take the fight to Democrats by introducing their own bills, including restrictions on, quote, sanctuary cities, to show their support for Trump's policies. That term is generally applied to state and local governments that limit cooperation with federal immigration authorities. We let the issue get away. We're not leading. We're trying to avoid losing rather than winning, said Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican of South Carolina, who held up the spending bills until Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Republican of South Dakota, agreed to give him a vote on his sanctuary cities bill at a later date. Thune acknowledged the difficulty of the next 2 weeks, saying there are some pretty significant views and feelings. We'll stay hopeful, Thune told reporters about the upcoming DHS fight, but there's some pretty significant differences in opinion. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time for our morning listeners is 9:13 a.m., and for our afternoon listeners, the time is 4:13 p.m. And now on to a front page feature. The constant, continuous battle against drugs in Jamestown. For the past several years, Jamestown has promoted itself as the comedy capital of the world. Already known and celebrated as the birthplace of legendary comedian Lucille Ball, this southern tier city of about 28,000 residents draws tens of thousands of people from around the world annually to the renowned National Comedy Center, which serves as the repository for exhibits and artifacts that have defined the art form for generations. But what's happening in city neighborhoods, not even a mile from the Comedy Center, is no laughing matter. The drug trade here brings death to dozens of people every year. Others end up in federal courthouses in Buffalo where they're sentenced to years, if not decades, in prison for having sold drugs, often to feed their own addictions. Some get a chance to rebuild their lives outside prison walls, but only after substance abuse treatment and monitoring from a probation officer during the years their cases wind through the court system. I've been here all my life and have never seen the problem worse than it is today, said Cindy Penhollow, a state-certified addiction recovery counselor who recently retired from running an outreach program at the non-denominational Jamestown Community Chapel. It's a constant, continuous battle. This community has lost so many people to drugs. It's just heartbreaking. Police officers and federal agents search homes and drug raids, make undercover drug buys, and seize heroin, fentanyl, and methamphetamine in traffic stops. Throughout last year, Jamestown defendants, often weighed down by addiction, shuffled into the U.S. courthouse in Buffalo for arraignments, plea hearings, or sentencing in handcuffs and shackles, many appearing nervous or sullen, while others smiled awkwardly to family members or tried to remain stoic. Out of some 270 drug defendants who appeared in Buffalo's federal courthouse in 2025, 83 came from Jamestown or thereabouts, according to a Buffalo News review of drug cases. That's 8 drug defendants for every 10,000 Chautauqua County adults. There were 2 drug defendants for every 10,000 Erie County adults for cases originating in Buffalo or its suburbs. I sit here and ask, why is this still happening? U.S. District Judge Richard J. Arcara said after one Jamestown sentencing, there's more of these cases every day. The defendants run the gamut from ages of 19 to 63 across racial and gender backgrounds. Here are a few from the Buffalo News. A 26-year-old man from Ohio faces a charge of delivering 2 pounds of methamphetamine to a Jamestown residence, bringing along her 3 children and her own mother. A once gifted basketball player, now in the Jamestown High Hall of Fame, sold methamphetamine when not coaching youth travel teams. A decorated combat veteran, suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder and struggling to transition into civilian life, became an enforcer for a drug dealer in return for drugs and admitted aiding and abetting a kidnapping in which the victim was killed, according to prosecutors. Joseph Zasso, age 41, with the street name Joey Cracks, faced a minimum of 20 years in prison when sentenced later this year on his plea to narcotics conspiracy and firearms charges. 22 other defendants have been linked to Zasso and often relied on social media to conduct their drug trafficking, according to court records. In another case showing the breadth of cases from Jamestown, one defendant testified against individuals in 16 grand jury proceedings. The results are devastating. Chautauqua County's 83 emergency departments' visits for heroin overdoses in 2023 ranked highest among New York counties per capita, according to a 2025 State Health Department report. Chautauqua County's 66 opioid overdose deaths that year ranked second per capita in the state, behind only the Bronx. The county also ranked second to the Bronx per capita for its 586 fatal opioid overdoses and non-fatal hospitalizations. Diane Start, an addiction recovery counselor, recalled finding someone who had overdosed lying in her front driveway just a couple years ago. He still had the needle in his arm, she said. I've lost count of how many of my kids' classmates have died over the years from drug addictions, Penhollow added. Vicious drug trade. Armed and violent drug traffickers add to the human toll in the sometimes vicious Southern Tier drug trade. The cases involving at least 3 other Jamestown defendants included sex trafficking charges, and firearms figured prominently in several cases. Alicia Klinger's plea agreement in October described the harm and humiliation that can come from those who owe a drug debt or steal drugs from traffickers. On Christmas Eve in 2020, Klinger, age 45, and Dimas Rios, also known as Monster, went to the home of a woman who owed them money. Rios struck the woman in the face with a handgun, causing facial and orbital fractures, according to the plea agreement. The handgun discharged, but the bullet didn't strike the woman. 5 months later, on May 24, 2021, Rios punched a sleeping woman in the face in her home, believing she stole $10,000 worth of heroin and methamphetamine the day before. Klinger and Rios then drove the woman to a wooded area on the city's east side, known for trails and wildlife viewing. Upon arriving, Rios hit her numerous times, according to Klinger's plea agreement. Prosecutors described Jacob Snow, age 38, whom the woman allegedly stole the drugs from, as a low-level dealer who was present but did not hit the woman himself. He might have saved her life. Should we kill her? Rios asked Snow. No, I think we should give her the opportunity to pay that back, Snow replied, according to the plea agreement. The group made the woman undress and walk back to her home. An elderly couple found her in a car, said Assistant U.S. Attorney Joshua Violante, who has been the prosecutor for most of the Jamestown drug cases. What happened to this victim is pretty horrific, Violante said at Snow's sentencing in early January. The situation I was in was horrible, Snow said in court when sentenced to 46 months in prison. It's astonishing to me how far down drugs dragged him, he said. But now, sober, he said, I've come a long way, and I'm excited for the future. The man called Monster has no future. A public records database indicates he died in May 2022. Snow's lawyer said he died from an overdose. And now on to world news. Openings of Rafah crossing vital for patients' care. Remus Abu Lahia was wounded 5 months ago when Israeli troops opened fire towards hungry Palestinians mobbing an aid truck for food in Gaza, and a bullet shattered the 15-year-old girl's left knee. Now her best chance of walking again is surgery abroad. She's one of a list of more than 20,000 Palestinians, including 4,500 children, who've been waiting, some for more than a year, for evacuation to get treatment for war wounds or chronic medical conditions, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. Their hopes hinge on the reopening of the Rafah border, crossing between Gaza and Egypt, a key point under the nearly 4-month-old ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Israel has announced the crossing will be open in both directions today on Sunday. The Israeli military body, in charge of coordinating aid in Gaza, said Friday that, quote, limited movement of people only would be allowed. Earlier, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had said Israel would allow 50 patients a day to leave. Others have spoken of up to 150 a day. That's a large jump from about 25 patients a week allowed to leave since the ceasefire began, according to UN figures. But it would still take anywhere from 130 to 400 days of crossings to get everyone in need out. Abu Lahia said her life depends on the crossing opening. I wish I didn't have to sit in this chair, she said, crying as she pointed at the wheelchair she relies on to move. I need help to stand, to dress, to go to the bathroom. Evacuation's critical. Israel's campaign in Gaza after the Hamas-led October 2023 attack on southern Israel that triggered the war has decimated the territory's health sector. The few hospitals still working were overwhelmed by casualties. There are shortages of medical supplies, and Israel has restricted aid entry. Hospitals are unable to perform complicated surgeries for many of the wounded, including thousands of amputees, or treat many chronic conditions. Gaza's single specialized cancer center shut down early in the war, and Israeli troops blew it up in early 2025. Without giving evidence, the military said Hamas militants were using it, though it was located in an area under Israeli control for most of the war. More than 10,000 patients have left Gaza for treatment abroad since the war began, according to the World Health Organization. After Israeli troops seized and closed the Rafah crossing in May 2024, and until the ceasefire, only 17 patients a week were evacuated from Gaza, except for a brief surge of more than 200 patients a week during a 2-month ceasefire in early 2025, according to WHO figures. About 440 of those seeking evacuation have life-threatening injuries or diseases, according to the health ministry. More than 1,200 patients have died while waiting for evacuation, the ministry said Tuesday. A UN official said one reason for the slow pace of evacuations has been that many countries are reluctant to accept the patients because Israel would not guarantee they would be allowed to return to the Gaza Strip. The official spoke on condition of anonymity. The majority of evacuees have gone to Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, or Turkey. He said it wasn't clear if it would charge with Rafah's opening. Even with daily or almost daily evacuations, he said, the number is still not very high. Israel has also banned sending patients to hospitals in the Israeli-occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem since the war began, the official said. A move that cut off what was previously the main outlet for Palestinians needing treatment unavailable in Gaza. 5 human rights groups have petitioned Israel's High Court of Justice to remove the ban. The court has not ruled. Still, one cancer patient in Gaza was allowed to travel to the West Bank for treatment on January 11th after the Jerusalem District Court accepted a petition in his case by the Israeli rights group Gisha. Also, Israel has said it will only allow around 50 Palestinians a day to enter Gaza, while tens of thousands of Palestinians hope to go back. But there's thousands of patients. Gaza has more than 11,000 cancer patients, and some 75% of the necessary chemotherapy drugs are not available, the health ministry said. At least 4,000 cancer patients need urgent treatment abroad, it added. Ahmed Barham, a 22-year-old university student, has been battling leukemia. He underwent 2 lymph node removal surgeries in June, but the disease is continuing to spread at, quote, an alarming rate, his father, Mohammed Barham, said. There is no treatment available here, the elder Barham said. His son, who has lost 77 pounds, got on the urgent list for referral abroad this past week, but still doesn't have a confirmation of travel. My son is dying before my eyes, the father said. In Mexico, cartels overtake market for banned vapes. When a drug cartel came calling at a store selling vapes in northern Mexico, the owners knew they were powerless. The cartel abducted 2 employees, blindfolded them, and demanded to speak with their bosses. The cartel said it was seizing the store, which would only be allowed to sell online outside the state. They don't come asking whether you want to give them your business or not. They come telling you what's about to happen, one of the owners, now 27 and living in the United States, said on the condition of anonymity. That was in early 2022, when vapes were still legal in Mexico and worth $1.5 billion. But in January, the country banned the sale, not the use, of electronic cigarettes. Experts believe organized crime will now consolidate its control over the sale of the devices. By banning it, you're handing the market to non-state groups in a country with high levels of corruption and violence tied to the cartels, said Zara Snap, director of the Mexico-based RIA Institute, which studies drug policy in Latin America. The ban also potentially strengthens the cartels by giving them another revenue stream that is not a high priority for the United States government because vapes are still legal there, said Alejandro Rosario, a lawyer representing many vape shops. Push to ban. Vaping is legal and regulated in the US and Europe, but it's now banned in at least 8 Latin American countries. Former Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, an outspoken critic of vaping, banned the import and sale of e-cigarettes. When Mexico's Supreme Court declared that unconstitutional, López Obrador pushed for a constitutional amendment which passed in January 2025 under his successor, Claudia Sheinbaum. Electronic cigarettes are now included alongside the powerful synthetic opioid fentanyl, something many lawmakers see as out of proportion. However, the lack of a law to implement the ban left a loophole, and vapes continued entering Mexico from China and the US. In December, they could still be found for sale in many shops and online. Still, authorities carried out raids and seizures. Last February, 130,000 electronic cigarettes were seized in the port of Lázaro Cárdenas. Aldo Martinez, age 39, a Mexico City shop owner, was fined $38,000 for selling the devices, fought the ruling, and eventually didn't have to pay. But in December, the legal loophole was closed. A new law prohibits virtually everything about vapes except consumption, imposing fines and prison sentences of up to 8 years. Martinez immediately stopped selling e-cigarettes, even though they accounted for 2/3 of his income. Martinez and his friends will consume his remaining inventory, but he fears authorities could raid his shop and plant vapes there in an attempt to extort him. Consumers are also concerned authorities could extort them because while it's not illegal to possess vapes, the new law is unclear about the number of devices that can still be considered personal use. If I make a vague law, I give corrupt authorities the ability to interpret it in a way to extort people, said Juan Jose Ciron Lee, a lawyer and president of the collective Mexico and the World Vaping. He plans to challenge the new regulations in court, saying they're ambiguous and full of contradictions. Cartels corner the market. While Mexico's ban was being forged, organized crime expanded its share of the sector across northern states and the country's largest cities, Guadalajara and Mexico City. Sometimes they even marked their products with stickers or stamps to distinguish their brand. Rosario, the lawyer, talked of intimidation, extortion, and violence that forced sellers in states like Sonora to get out of the business. Others, like some of his former clients in Sinaloa, decided to sell vapes supplied by the cartel, which promised they would have no problems with authorities, he said. I lost about 40% of my clients, Rosario said. The shop owner, now living in the U.S., said he was comparatively lucky because the cartel paid something for the business and sought the owner's expertise on how it worked. The cartel already knew everything about them, including addresses and the names of relatives, he said. He and his co-owner are now closing their own online business because they do not want to choose between the cartel and prison sentences under the new ban. The cheapest and most popular devices, the most interesting to the cartels, are disposable. Some countries have banned them because of the plastic, electronic, and chemical waste. According to Rosario, the cartels are already presenting themselves as suppliers and formal businesses, with some even buying the disposable shells directly from Asian manufacturers to fill themselves, given the lack of regulation. That raises the potential for adulterated products from organizations that already handle all manner of illicit drugs. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time for our morning listeners is 9:30 a.m., and for our afternoon listeners, the time is 4:30 p.m. And now on to Washington news. Details of earlier investigation are part of Epstein files release. Newly disclosed government files on Jeffrey Epstein are offering more details about his interactions with the rich and famous after he served time for sex crimes in Florida, and on how much investigators knew about his abuse of underage girls when they decided not to indict him on federal charges nearly 2 decades ago. The documents released Friday include Epstein's communications with former White House advisors and NFL team co-owner and billionaires including Bill Gates and Elon Musk. President Trump's Justice Department said it would be releasing more than 3 million pages of documents, along with more than 2,000 videos and 180,000 images, under a law intended to reveal most of the material it collected during 2 decades of investigating the wealthy financier. The files posted to the department's website included documents involving Epstein's friendships with Britain's Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly known as Prince Andrew, and with one-time Trump advisor Steve Bannon, New York Giants co-owner Steve Tisch, and other prominent contacts with people in political, business, and philanthropic circles. Other documents offer a window into various investigations, including ones that led to sex trafficking charges against Epstein in 2019 and his longtime confidant Ghislaine Maxwell in 2021, and an earlier inquiry that found evidence of Epstein cavorting with underage girls but never led to federal charges. Draft detailed abuse. The FBI started investigating Epstein in July 2006, and agents expected him to be indicted in May 2007, according to the newly released records. A prosecutor wrote up a proposed or draft indictment after multiple underage girls told police and the FBI that they had been paid to give Epstein sexualized massages. The draft included the latest batch of documents, indicated prosecutors were preparing to charge not just Epstein, but also 3 people who worked for him as personal assistants. According to interview notes released Friday, an employee at Epstein's Florida estate told the FBI in 2007 that Epstein once had him buy flowers and deliver them to a student at Royal Palm Beach High School to commemorate her performance in a school play. The employee, whose name was blacked out, said some of his duties were fanning $100 bills on a table near Epstein's bed, placing a gun between the mattresses in his bedroom, and cleaning up after Epstein's frequent massages with young girls, including disposing of used condoms. Ultimately, the U.S. attorney in Miami at the time, Alexander Acosta, signed off on a deal that let Epstein avoid federal prosecution. Epstein pled guilty instead to a state charge of soliciting prostitution from someone under age 18 and got an 18-month jail sentence. Acosta was Trump's first labor secretary in his first term. But here's the famous names. The records have thousands of references of Trump, including emails in which Epstein and others shared news articles about him, commented on his policies or politics, or gossiped about him and his family. Also included was a spreadsheet created in August summarizing uncorroborated tips from people claiming to have some knowledge of wrongdoing by Trump. Mountbatten Windsor's name appeared at least several hundred times in the newly released recordings, in news clippings, Epstein's private emails, and guest lists for dinner Epstein organized. Some records document prosecutors' attempt to get him to agree to be interviewed. The records also show Musk, the Tesla, SpaceX, and ex-billionaire, reached out to Epstein on at least twice to plan visits to a Caribbean island where much of Epstein's alleged sexual abuse purportedly occurred. It was not immediately clear whether the visits took place. Spokespeople for Musk's companies did not respond to emails seeking comment. Musk has said he repeatedly rebuffed Epstein's overtures. Epstein also appears to have tried to connect Tish with women according to emails in one exchange. Tish told Epstein he had lunch with one of Epstein's assistant's friends, a quote, very sweet girl, and asked if Epstein knew anything about her. Tish said in a brief statement that he had a brief association with Epstein, but quote, never went to his island and deeply regrets knowing him. The documents show that Bannon, a conservative activist who served as a strategist in Trump's first term, bantered over politics with Epstein, discussed get-togethers with him over meals, and in March 2019 asked Epstein if he could supply his plane to pick up Bannon in Rome. In December 2012, Epstein invited Howard Lutnick, the Wall Street billionaire and now President Trump's Commerce Secretary, to his island for lunch, the records show. Lutnick's wife accepted the invitation and said they would arrive on a yacht with their children. On another occasion in 2011, the men had drinks according to a schedule shared with Epstein. Lutnick has said he cut ties with Epstein long ago. A Commerce Department spokesperson said Lutnick had limited interactions with Epstein in the presence of his wife and has never been accused of any wrongdoing. Another Epstein contact was former Obama White House General Counselor Kathy Rumler. In one exchange, Epstein emailed Rumler to advise that Democrats should stop demonizing Trump as a mafia-type figure, even as he derided Trump as a maniac. A spokesperson for Goldman Sachs, where Rumler is general counsel and chief legal officer, said she had a professional association with Epstein and regrets ever knowing him. Lemon's arrest escalates Trump's clashes with the media. For years at CNN, Don Lemon has been a thorn in the side of President Trump, frequently taking to task during his first term over his comments about immigrants and other matters. On Friday, the former CNN anchor, now an independent journalist who hosts his own YouTube show, was in a Los Angeles federal courtroom and charged with conspiracy and interfering with First Amendment rights of worshipers during the January 18th protest at the city's church in St. Paul, Minnesota. Lemon was arrested by federal officials in Los Angeles on Friday, along with a second journalist and two of the participants in the protest of the federal government's immigration enforcement tactics in Minneapolis. Lemon identified himself at the protest as a journalist. His attorney said in a statement Lemon's work was, quote, constitutionally protected. I spent my entire career covering the news, Lemon told reporters after he was released on his own recognizance Friday afternoon. I will not stop now. The arrest marked an extraordinary escalation in the Trump administration's frayed relations with the news media and journalists. Earlier in January, the FBI seized the devices of Washington Post reporter Hannah Nathanson in a pre-dawn raid as part of an investigation into a contractor who has been charged with sharing classified documents. Last spring, the Associated Press was banned from the White House. The AP sued White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt and two other administration officials, demanding reinstatement. Even the Committee to Protect Journalists, an organization that monitors and honors reporters imprisoned by authoritarian government regimes overseas, felt compelled to weigh in on Lemon's arrest. As an international organization, we know that the treatment of journalists is a leading indicator of the condition of a country's democracy, CPJ Chief Executive Jody Ginsburg said in a statement. These arrests are just the latest in a string of egregious and escalating threats to the press in the United States, and an attack on people's right to know. For Lemon, age 59, it's another chapter in a career that has undergone a major reinvention in the last 10 years, largely because of his harsh takes on Trump and the boundary-pushing moves of his administration. His journey has been fraught, occasionally marked with him at the center of stories he covers. He has a finely honed sense of what people are talking about and where the action is, and he heads straight for it in a good way, said Jonathan Wald, a veteran TV producer who's worked with Lemon over the years. A Louisiana native, Lemon began his career in local TV news, working at the Fox-owned station in New York City and NBC's WMAQ in Chicago, where he got into trouble with management. Robert Fetter, a longtime media columnist in Chicago, recalled Lemon was suspended by his station for refusing to cover a crime story he felt was beneath him. But Lemon's good looks and smooth delivery helped him move to CNN in 2006, where his work was not always well received. He took over the primetime program CNN Tonight in 2014 and became part of the network's almost obsessive coverage of the missing Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. Lemon was ridiculed for asking an aviation expert if the plane might have been sucked into a black hole. Like a number of other TV journalists, Lemon also found his voice after Trump's ascension to the White House. He injected more commentary into CNN Tonight, calling Trump a racist after the president made a remark in the Oval Office about immigrants coming from shithole countries to the U.S. After George Floyd was murdered by a police officer in Minneapolis in May 2020, Lemon's prime status as the lone black primetime anchor on cable news made his program a gathering place for the national discussion about race. His ratings surged, giving CNN its largest 10 p.m. audience in its history with 2.4 million viewers. But Lemon's candid talk about race relations and criticisms of Trump made him a target of the president's social media missives. In a 2020 interview, Lemon told The Times that he had to learn to live with threats on his life from Trump supporters. "It's garnered me a lot of enemies," he said, "a lot of them in person. As well, I have to watch my back over time." Lemon never let up, but CNN management had other ideas. After Warner Brothers Discovery took control of CNN in 2022, Chief Executive David Zaslav said the network had moved too far to the political left in its coverage and called for more representation of conservative voices. Following the takeover, Lemon moved to a new morning program, a format where CNN has never been successful over its 4-decade-plus history. Lemon's CNN Tonight program was built around his scripted commentaries and his like-minded guests, delivering off-the-cuff banter in reaction to news of the moment. A requirement for morning TV news was not his strong suit. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time for our morning listeners is 9:41 a.m., and for our afternoon listeners, the time is 4:41 p.m. And now on to business news. Duvall says med school is finding strong appeal. Duvall University says it's reaching strong interest in its newly established College of Osteopathic Medicine as it advances plans for a permanent location for the school. The inaugural class of 90 students is nearly 2/3 full, according to the university. Duvall said the program is attracting applicants with academic credentials exceeding initial expectations, but applications remain open. Classes for the program's first year, which will begin this fall, will take place at Duvall's Westside campus. Duvall's long-range plan is to locate the College of Osteopathic Medicine in a renovated existing office building at 285 Delaware Avenue, which is owned by a Uniland development affiliate. The university has signed a long-term lease to occupy the facility with an option to purchase after 10 years. Renovations are set to start in the spring, with plans to hold classes there starting in fall 2027. Duvall said the renovated building will include advanced anatomy and simulation labs, technology-enabled classrooms, and collaborative learning across areas that simulate healthcare settings. The building is just a few blocks away from the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus. The university's plans to expand the school's enrollment over time to a projected 720 student positions by 2031. Duvall scrapped a previous $175 million plan to build a new facility for the school at its Westside campus. The university halted construction in 2024 after costs associated with the project soared. Duvall and Uniland are instead building a student housing project at the West Avenue site. UB names leader for AI Institute. The University at Buffalo has named Siwei Liu, an expert on the forensics of deepfakes and other AI-generated media, as director for its Institute for Artificial Intelligence and Data Science. The institute, which was established in 2021, brings together faculty, labs, and centers of excellence from across UB and industry partners to solve complex challenges. Liu is a SUNY Distinguished Professor and SUNY Empire Innovation Professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering within the School of Engineered and Applied Sciences. UB continues to deepen its commitment to responsibly harnessing AI and data science to address critical social challenges, said Venu Govindaraju, UB Senior Vice President for Research, Innovation, and Economic Development. We're excited that Siwei Liu, who is among the world's foremost authorities in digital media forensics and an expert in machine learning and computer vision, will assume leadership of IAD, he said. Jenkins will head Business Center. The new executive director at Canisius University's Women's Business Center comes with an entrepreneurial background plus experience at a 43 North portfolio company. Lauren C. Jenkins, a Buffalo resident, most recently served as head of marketing at StoreCash, a fintech startup. StoreCash was among the $1 million prize winners in the 2023 edition of the 43 North Business Plan competition. One of her other previous experiences was founding Flower Studio, a direct-to-consumer subscription business. Lauren's experience building and growing her own business, along with her work leading marketing and strategy for companies, makes her an excellent fit for the Women's Business Center, said Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs Irene Holohan-Moyer. The Women's Business Center was founded in 2003. It provides training, advising, and resources to women-owned businesses in Western New York. Jenkins will oversee businesses, advising and training, expand accelerator programs, strengthen community partnerships, and broaden access to resources for women-owned businesses. Despite disappointment, Bills fans keep on giving. The Buffalo Bills may be done playing this season, but the team and its fans continue to have an impact on the community through charitable giving. Fans rallied behind Bills quarterback Josh Allen after the team lost in the AFC divisional round to the Denver Broncos last Sunday by donating over $171,000 to the Patricia Allen Fund at Golisano Children's Hospital of Buffalo. They then supported Sean McDermott by donating over $65,000 to the Skin Cancer Foundation in honor of the coach after he was fired by the team following 9 seasons at the helm. There are also companies like Broadview Federal Credit Union that made Bills-themed donations. After Buffalo's victory over the Jacksonville Jaguars the week prior in the AFC wildcard round and the team's 2-game postseason run, Broadview donated $21,500 to Roswell Park Alliance Foundation as part of the Albany-based company's annual Playoffs with a Purpose campaign. This comes after $139,000 was donated to the Patricia Allen Fund in collaboration with the New Era Cap during Buffalo's regular season. The campaign featured the auctioning of a unique Billustration team cap customized by a Golisano Children's Hospital patient that Allen wore during the tunnel walk at each of the Bills' 9 home games this season. Though a disappointing outcome and ending of the Buffalo Bills season, Bills fans proved once again they always find a way to turn a negative into something positive, Stephen Turkovich, president of Golisano Children's Hospital, said in a statement. Last year, Allen expanded his long-standing partnership with New Era, becoming the first ambassador to receive an investment stake in the company and earning a new title as the first ever Director of Billustration. As part of the new role, Allen wore the patient-designed caps, which were auctioned off after the Bills' home game during the regular season. With money going to the Children's Hospital, the last cap he wore after the team's final regular season game and final one of the Highmark Stadium before the Bills moved into their new stadium next season went for $30,100, which is the highest amount of the entire campaign, bringing the total to $139,095. Before that, the caps raised anywhere from $3,600 to $20,000 per game. The team's 33-30 overtime loss at Denver sparked even more donations for the Golisano Children's Hospital as fans were moved by how emotional Allen was after the playoff game. Donations for Allen, often in $17 increments, which represent his jersey number, poured in along with the messages of support for the quarterback, with total contributions exceeding 7,243 individual gifts. What started 5 years ago as a call from fans to make a $17 individual donation to the hospital that Allen supported in memory of his grandmother has morphed into a movement that provided nearly $17 million to the only standalone children's hospital in the state, formerly called Oishei Children's Hospital. Equipment that has been purchased because of the fund helps bolster the critical care provided for the sickest children and babies. It's become a global giving community with tens of thousands of donors coming from 12 countries, from small donations to major corporate dollars. Gifts like this help us recruit top clinicians, upgrade equipment and technology, and enhance crucial programs, Turkovich added. He also wants to join Bills fans in thanking Josh for his remarkable efforts on and off the field again this season. As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That number again being 716-821-5555. Michael V. Adgate, Charles K. Ackers, Nicholas Altimus, Robert F. Bowman, Eugene Louis Bracci, Mark S. Buchholz, Nisana Brown, Phyllis Byron Greenwood, Maureen Canny, Natalie Marie Castrogiovanni Nee Barnhard, George M. Chmielewski, Douglas S. Conway, Valerie C. Cooley, Marianne Devlin ni Nunari, James Jim Egan, Joseph Fox, Ellen J. Friedenberg ni Galvin, William C. Frosty Frost, Patrick Sean Goller, William C. Handley, Peter R. Hanks, Carol J. Howry, Moira J. Ireland ni Cruz, Mary E. Izzy ni Colantonio, Andrew J. Medija, Donald Markovitz, Jacob C. Mays Jr., Lester McDew, Geraldine T. McFarland, Ethel K. McCarrow ni Holsapple, Joseph B. Miller, Beatrice T. Mayatska ni Goss, Roger W. Naylor, James Neenan, Christino Oritz, Dennis J. Perry, Maureen A. Polanowski ni Gavin, Thomas J. Popovich, Kenneth P. Prusbitz, Angela Rinaldi ni Fedicanti, Barry J. Roach, Frank Salvini, Dennis J. Shearer, Donald Schwab, Rosalie C. Scropo, David S. Sitniewski, Judith P. Speller ni Paulson, Catherine Swafford, Robert P. Szymanski, Paul S. Tarlowski, Russell D. Thomas, Michael Trost, Andrea J. Troyer ni Schultz, Matthew Lumpy Tolowicki, Isabella Vasquez, Philip D. Vossler, Joseph J. Yetzi, Edward J. Zimmerman, Susan F. Zorn, Helen M. Zuricki Jablonki. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. Again, that number is 716-821-5555. And now on to today's horoscopes. It's Royal Stars from Georgia Nichols. Happy birthday for Sunday, February 1st, 2026. You are multi-talented, charismatic, and quick to evaluate a situation. You're strong-willed, grounded, and sensible. This is a year of building and construction. It's time to create foundations both internally and externally. The stars show the kind of day you'll have. 5 is dynamic, 4 is positive, 3 is average, 2 is so-so, and 1 is just difficult. For Aries, you're having a 4-star day. Parents will have to be tolerant with their kids today because this is the classic day for hissy fits, meltdowns, and rebellions. Tonight, be low-key. Taurus, a 2-star day. This is the classic day for difficulties with bosses, parents, VIPs, and the police. Tonight, cocoon. Gemini, a 3-star day. Steer clear of arguments with others today. Not only will this ruin your peace of mind, it could also trigger an accident because of the distraction it would create. Tonight, discussions. Cancer, a 3-star day. You're never casual about money, and this might be one reason financial discussions with others about shared property, shared costs, and shared responsibilities could lead to an argument. Tonight, check your possessions. For Leo, a 2-star day. This is a challenging day for you. With the moon in your sign, you're a bit more emotional than usual. Today, 3 planets oppose your moon, which will create difficulties. Tonight, you are strong. Virgo, you're having a 3-star day. Be patient with work colleagues today or anything related to your pet or even your health because people are quick to anger. Patience. Tonight, privacy. Libra, a 3-star day. Romantic disputes, as well as difficult dealings with your kids, might erupt today because the moon is opposite Pluto, Mars, and the sun. Tonight, friendships. Scorpio, a 2-star day. Be considerate when dealing with family members today, especially females, mothers, and older relatives. It will be easy for you to be annoyed. Tonight, you are noticed. Sagittarius, a 3-star day. Steer clear of sensitive topics today because people are argumentative. Subjects like politics, religion, and racial issues will quickly escalate. Tonight, explore. Capricorn, a 3-star day. Avoid financial disputes or arguments about your possessions. In all likelihood, nothing will come of it except a disappointment in someone or a grudge. Tonight, check your finances. Aquarius, a 2-star day. Houston, we have a problem. This is a grumpy day for many people. Today, the moon is opposite your sign, challenging a handful of planets. Tonight, cooperate. And for Pisces, a 3-star day. Be patient when dealing with others today, especially people at work or people who are involved with your healthcare or your pet. Tonight, work. And for today in history, on this date, February 1st, in 1865, abolitionist John S. Rock became the first black lawyer admitted to the bar of the U.S. Supreme Court. In 1943, during World War II, one of America's most highly decorated military units, the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, made up almost exclusively of Japanese Americans, was activated. In 1960, 4 black college students began a sit-in protest at the Woolworth's lunch counter in Greensboro, North Carolina, where they had been refused service. In 1979, Iranian religious leader Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini was welcomed home by millions in Tehran as he ended nearly 15 years of exile. In 1991, an arriving U.S. air jetliner crashed atop a commuter plane on a runway at Los Angeles International Airport, resulting in 35 deaths. In 1994, Jeffrey Gillooly, Tonya Harding's ex-husband, pled guilty in Portland, Oregon to racketeering in the attack on figure skater Nancy Kerrigan in exchange for a 24-month sentence and a $100,000 fine. In 2002, Wall Street Journal journalist Daniel Pearl was killed by Islamist militants in Pakistan after being kidnapped 9 days earlier. And in 2003, the Space Shuttle Columbia broke apart as we entered the Earth's atmosphere, killing all 7 crew members. You're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Sunday, February 1st, 2026, on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your reader for this hour has been Edwin J. Vieira, and for the second hour, your reader will be Ron Bickelman. Thank you for listening.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
continue now with our reading of articles from the Buffalo News. Your reader is Ron Bickelman. In local news, wrong turns to Peace Bridge spur call for changes to ramp. 2 state lawmakers are calling for the Peace Bridge Authority and the State Department of Transportation to fix design flaws at the entrance of the Peace Bridge that have reportedly resulted in as many as 20 drivers per day inadvertently crossing from Buffalo into Canada. But the agency that operates the bridge said solving that problem is easier said than done. Assemblyman John Rivera and State Senator April Baskin, both Democrats from Buffalo, this week wrote to the Buffalo and Fort Erie Public Bridge Authority and the state DOT demanding changes for current design that they said undermines safety and efficiency. The lawmakers said the issue has become even more critical because of the federal government's aggressive and unjust immigration enforcement tactics. A simple driving error can now result in detention, interrogation, or worse. This is an unacceptable risk created not by driver negligence, but by infrastructure design failures, according to a letter Friday to Eric A. Metka, Regional Director for the State DOT Region 5. That already has happened in the case of Sovji Huznov, a University of Buffalo researcher who is from Azerbaijan and was detained by border agents after he was unable to turn around at the Peace Bridge. Huzenov's attorneys, Sienna McLean, said her client was put into a position where he was on a confusing roadway with no opportunity to safely turn around when he accidentally crossed into Canada on January 7th. Huzanov has no criminal history and a visa that allows him to work in the U.S. through 2029. But he returned to Buffalo. Border Patrol agent When he returned to Buffalo, Border Patrol agents stopped him from entering the U.S., transferred him to ICE agents who took him to the Batavia Detention Center. He was then transferred to ICE Detention Center in rural Michigan, where he remained until recently. In today's immigration enforcement climate, these design flaws carry real and serious consequences for real people, McLean said in a prepared statement provided to the news. This is not a hypothetical problem. The Peace Bridge Authority has been aware of these conditions for years, and corrective action is long overdue. Riviera and Baskin wrote to Mecca after sending a letter on Thursday to Ron Renis, former general manager and chief executive officer of Buffalo and Fort Erie Public Bridge Authority, proposing that the authority immediately establish a border or pullover area before the U.S. Customs inspection point so that vehicles mistaking entering the Bridge Plaza may safely through a padlock gate at Vermont may exit safely through a padlock gate at Vermont Street and Bustye Avenue. Renis retired from the authority in 2029, but he responded to Rivera and Baskin by explaining that the 2016 bridge ramp redesign was a state DOT project. Thomas Boyle, and current CEO of Buffalo and Fort Erie Public Bridge Authority, said in an interview with the news that the authority does not track how often drivers unintentionally cross into Canada, but we understand it happens frequently. New York Times, in an article last May, said a Colombian asylum seeker who mistakenly drove across Niagara River while trying to follow directions to Syracuse on Google Maps quoted a Canadian official as saying as many as 20 drivers a day make the same mistake. It's been happening since the DOT in 2016 completed a ramp design that helped restore Front Park but also removed Baird Drive, which ran through the park and served as a bailout for motorists who found themselves mistakenly headed towards the bridge. This redesign added a large roundabout on Porter Avenue that loads drivers into the Peace Bridge ramp. The Bridge Authority has had discussions with Customs and Border Protection and city and state officials about travelers ending up in a no man's land on the way to Canada after taking a wrong turn, said Boyle. Boyle said there's little the authority can do. That gate at Bustye Avenue and Vermont Street is part of a secure point of the entry plaza that's under control of Customs and Border Protection, not the Bridge Authority, he said. The solution seems to be preventing motorists from making the wrong turn. And it really goes back to the design of that roundabout. The exits for the Peace Bridge and the 190 North are far too close to each other, and the decision-making process isn't very clear. But Rivera said he didn't think there was a security issue involved with occasionally opening the gate to let through a wayward motorist, which he called the simple solution to the problem. If you're a pedestrian, you're on a bike, or you're using some other mode other than an automobile, you can figure it out, and you can just get out of there, he said. Customs and Border Protection should want to mitigate confusion as much as anyone. At the end of the day, want to make it so vehicles are going where they need to go, he said. Rivera said the Peace Bridge Authority at some point should take responsibility and care about the people that are using its space instead of pointing fingers at the state, city, and Customs and Border Protection refusing to do anything. Fire devastates dairy farm in South Wales. Main milking facility leveled. Many cows and herd have died. A Friday afternoon fire tore through a South Towns dairy farm, destroying the barn structure and milking equipment within, leaving most of the herd dead or severely injured. It's too much for the Perrin family to recover from. Devastating fire leveled the main milking barn at the Perrin's Organic Dairy Farm on Centerline Road in South Wales. Patton Farm had 45 milking cows, and all along with about half dozen calves were inside the barn when the fire was reported about 3 p.m. Jackie Virgin, a daughter of Tom and Pat Perrin, told the Buffalo News Saturday. It was hours before the family members could get inside and try to rescue the herd. Virgin said a number of calves and 20 or so adult cows were rescued, but a number of cows were already succumbed to their injuries, and others faced uncertain recovery from smoke inhalation. The loss of the herd, the barn structure, and the costly equipment within, combined with her father's age and health issues, make it unlikely the family will rebuild, Virgin said. We're done milking, Tom Perrin told the News as he took in the scene on Saturday. We've been in this place since 1949, milked cows since then. I was born here in 52. I've been with upstate Niagara since 1970. We're done now. There's no way. I'm too old. Patton Farm supplied organic milk to upstate Niagara Co-op. Tom Perrin's father had started the farm, Virgin said, and Tom Perrin, now in his early 70s, had worked on the farm his entire life. It's devastating emotionally, heartbreaking to my parents. It was who my dad was, Virgin said, and he will take care of the young animals that were not affected, but I don't think at his age, I don't think milking will be able to resume. Perrin Farm property is about 120 acres just east of Wales Aurora line, near Sergeant Mark Rademacher's Memorial Park, Hunters Creek County Park. Virgin said a passerby spotted the fire and called it in. She said her parents were on their way back from a medical appointment at the time. Tom Perrin receives radiation treatments for cancer every weekday at the Western New York Cancer Center in Cheektowaga, she said. We came right home, but it was too late, Tom Perrin, his voice choking, told the News. South Wales and fire companies responded, but extreme cold temperatures and the reliance on well water complicated the efforts to knock down the fire, Virgin said. Family members had to wait until it was safe enough to enter the barn to see which animals could be rescued. He said an Australian Shepherd farm dog made it out, along with a couple of cats, but the ducks and pheasants that lived on the second floor near the hayloft did not, Virgin said. Between 20 and 25 milking cows were rescued, but some have since died from smoke inhalation, and more may follow, she said. They just stand there and boom, fall right over, Perrin said. At least one had to be put down on Saturday. The fire destroyed all the milking equipment and the stainless steel bulk storage tanks that were in the barn, Virgin said. A total loss of their income, she said. Virgin said the cause of the fire wasn't known, though her father later said it might have been started with a hot water heater. South Wales farm officials did not respond to messages seeking additional information. The Perrin family had rebuilt when a heavy snowfall in November of 2014 caused a partial collapse of the roof on a different structure, a pole barn, on the property. But this time it's different, the family said, as they assessed the full extent of their losses. That's what we're trying to do, get everything put back together to see what's left and if they're able to keep animals comfortable, said Keith Virgin, Jackie's husband. Chuck Lowley, a neighbor and fellow farmer, took in the 3 surviving calves, but he doesn't know how long This is about their long-term prognosis. They're in pretty rough shape, too, he said in an interview. Holly had received a call from another neighbor about the fire and drove the 5 miles from Patton Farm on Friday afternoon. The barn was full of flames and smoke. The fire company was working trying to put it out, but it's a complete loss, Holly said. He said he went back Friday after receiving a call from Tom Perrin that some of the animals had survived and been pulled from the barn. He returned Saturday to continue helping with cows that made it out alive. Holly previously milked cows, but now raises them for dairy farms along with doing crop work for the Perrins and other farmers. He said the emotional loss for the Perrins, who are well liked in the community, may be even worse than the financial loss. This is their entire life, Holly said. That's all they've ever done. One of the Perrin's grandchildren, Jacob Vergian, has started a GoFundMe page to raise money for the family. New staff photographer Libby March contributed to this report. Continuing along, yep, it's cold. Get outside and enjoy it. There are lots of ways to make the most of winter if you don't ski. Winter means business this year. Good, bring it on. Complaining is the first step. We've all earned our right to rage against weather that seems intent on hurting us. But once the complaining is over, why not make sorbet out of snow and ice now enveloping western New York? There are fun, even exciting ways to experience winter, as skiers and snowmobilers have long known. I don't ski, but I've known other options that exploit winter's beauty and living things that thrive here, even in temps like these. On Wednesday, I took a walk into the vast frozen reaches of Lake Erie. It's about 10 degrees and cloudy. I was after the ice fishermen whose huts make splashes of color past the boat docks. It's not every year they can do this, but Lake Erie has had the right conditions for ice fishing for at least a week, with more than 90% of the lake covered with ice. That's at least near the small boat harbor where I was, anywhere from 8 to 12 inches deep. 4 inches is all you need, according to the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. I wasn't worried about breaking through the ice, as I gingerly made my way across the ditch and a rocky, slippery barrier and then onto the lake. Drowning isn't likely under these conditions, but an injurious tumble is. Next time, if you wear I'll wear my traction spikes. The DEC recommends boot cleats as one of ice fishing's several safety tips that can be found on the agency's website. There weren't many out there fishing on a weekday, but I welcomed the 2 huts, both located a few feet past the docks. In the first, a brown circular affair, Kevin Weiss and Patrick Kazmierzak had just finished setting up. They had already drilled a hole through the ice, which they affirmed was 8 inches thick, with a gas-powered auger, which is much faster than hand-operated. Kazmierzak and his fish finder set up, and Weiss was untangling his tackle. This is the first time in probably 52 years, Weiss said, who's 62, said. He had gone ice fishing as a Cub Scout, but recalls there was no shelter, no powered equipment that was sitting out on the ice with basically really nothing, which really wasn't much fun. Now he's retired after a long-time job with a mechanical firm at selling classic car parts. He's ready to try it again, especially now that technology is better. Kazmierzak, 24, grew up with his family of anglers, has been ice fishing for about 6 years. He's avid. The two are both volunteer firefighters in Cheektowaga, and Kazmierzak works in construction. They didn't expect to be catching a meal, but that was just fine with them. I don't even take them home, Kazmierzak said. I just love the aspect of fishing. Weiss notes that if you get a good handful of perch, it might be worthwhile. But if not, it's not even worth the effort to fillet them. Small perch are the same game when it comes to ice fishing, and sometimes they're not so easy to catch, even with a fish finder. You get to take a little breather. At the next hut over, Greg Brune and Mike Case, Greg Brune, 27, Mike Case, 52, both work at Lactalis, had been on the lake for 5 hours, and so far caught nothing, though Brune's fish finder was clearly operational, and its small screen fish could be seen swimming to and fro, inadvertently yummy waxworms hanging from the fishing poles above them. Man, I've seen probably about at least 70 fish today, Brune says. Their lack of success is obviously not a big deal. I could hear the two men having a loud, jovial conversation for quite a distance before I got to their blue, cozily heated hut. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News on the Niagara Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour. Bruin of West Seneca and Case of Newfane both have been ice fishing for 6 to 10 years respectively, and Bruin is an experienced year-round angler, mainly for steelhead. Bruin plans to spend as many days as possible on the lake, fish or no fish. I do depressingly love it, he says. It's really slow, but it makes you get away from the stresses of life. I am constantly going through stuff. We're both management, so we always have stress going on. And I have family stress. My mom just passed away from cancer. Out here, it's like everything fades away, and you're just here. Case agrees. Being out here, you get a little breather. I can understand where he's coming from. Birds of the Niagara. Fish aren't the only creatures thriving in Western New York's frigid waterways. Anybody with a bird feeder can enjoy the common songbirds of winter, cardinals, chickadees, and finches. But for truly exotic birds action, you must venture outdoors, specifically along the Niagara River. Officially designated a globally significant important bird area at any time, the corridor was renowned for large numbers of windfowl in the winter, including many rare species of gulls, swans, and ducks. They not only mention the terrestrial species to be seen, including bald eagles, peregrine, falcons, and snowy owls. Marcus Ross is director of Western New York Wildway and Western New York Land Conservancy, is one of Buffalo's most outgoing, ever ebullient naturalists. He co-organizes Birds on the Niagara International Bird Festival, fellow birder, Buff State University media professor Ruth Goldman. Rosston 32 says one of the best ways you can defy winter is to hang out on the brink of Niagara Falls, staring at 100 or even 1,000 gulls that are circling around you like you're in a snow globe. Continuing along in local news, Bill's Mafia House is the latest parcel for sale near the stadium. Shane Prudy had a blast owning the well-known Bill's Mafia House next to Highmark Stadium for the past 14 years. But he also holds leadership role at his place of work, and his 3 school-aged children are active in youth sports, and he coaches some of his kids' teams, and taking on responsibility of running the property has become a lot for him to handle. There has also been renewed interest in properties in the area, with the team's new more than $2 billion stadium nearing completion, and the town of Orchard Park recently creating a new stadium mixed use for the areas closest to the stadium, where there are more possibilities for mixed use development and family-friendly activities. Prudy has put the 16,261 square foot double property on 60 Faith Street, situated between the Bills practice field in the field house and the new stadium across the street in Abreu, for sale for $699,900. This is about a little over a third of an acre of property. The small residence on the property is over 100,000 square feet and has 2 bedrooms and 1 bath. It joins a plethora of parcels already on sale around the stadium as property owners try to take advantage of developers considering projects in the area with excitement building for the new stadium. But only one of those properties has sold for an entity other than the Bills the past several years, with the parcel on the corner of Southwestern Boulevard and Abbott, which included the former KK Food Mart, selling a few months ago for $2 million to a local business owner and a real estate investor. No, I don't enjoy it. I probably have a better job than anyone in the world, but it's become a lot for me, said Prouty, who runs Western New York and Northwest Pennsylvania Territory for Shinta's First Aid and Safety Division. I know the potential for the place, and financially, with time for me, I have hit the wall with the best. It's the best I can do with it, he added. It's not easy to walk away from it. There are at least 10 other properties on sale within a mile or so of the new stadium, and some have been on the market for a few years, but Prouty believes the property is more priced to sell than some other locations. But questions linger about whether any type of development progress will ever happen around the new stadium, given that there have been very little trickle-down development in any area since the Bills came to Orchard Park more than 5 decades ago. Just from where the property sits, it's going to make well over my asking price in the next 30 years, Prouty said. I'm confident in the price point. I know some of the properties have sat on the market for quite a while, but I think ours is listed have more of a selling price. And the right person, I think there's nostalgia to owning behind the house already there. This is Prouty's first home purchase, and he transformed it into the ultimate Bills house, both inside and out. That includes a painting of the Bills Mafia logo on the outside of the cottage, built in 1941. Some of the inside was renovated as well, and he moved into the house. But it needs more work, Prouty said. Tailgates have been open to everyone, including opposing team fans, and they are very family-friendly. Prouty has also parked RVs and campers on the lot over the past several years. Each year, the tailgate has gotten bigger, and people have learned about it. Prouty has also welcomed big stars and legends in the past and present, including Josh Allen visiting the house in 2023. It began with a few local friends parking there, and then we got to know even more and more people, and it turned into what it is now, and even more people are coming, and a lot of them are from outside the area, from different states and countries. Prouty said it has turned into a landmark. Looking at some national news again, the Carolinas supplant Florida, Texas as new boom states. Move over Florida and Texas. The United States has a new hotspot for growth, and they both have Carolina in their name. North Carolina last year attracted more new residents, 84,000 people from other parts of the country than any other state, a title held by Texas in 2024, and Florida in 2 years before that. South Carolina had the highest overall growth rate last year at 1.5%, a distinction among states held by Florida in 2024, according to the U.S. Census Bureau figures released this past week. Domestic migration slowed in Texas. The 67,300 domestic migrants heading to the second most populous state year over barely squeaked by South Carolina, which had the third highest number of domestic migrants, 66,600. The appeal of Florida, the nation's third most populous state, dimmed. It dropped to number 8 for the state-to-state migration as more U.S. residents preferred to move elsewhere, including Alabama. Younger folks, nice areas. North Carolina state developer Michael Klein credited the state's growth to high-paying jobs in banking and tech, and topographical diversity as having smaller cities than Florida and Texas. North Carolina is attracting younger folks because we have so many nice areas in North Carolina, the mountains, the beaches, the lakes, in between. And we're benefiting from younger people who decided they can work from anywhere and they would rather be in a nice area, Klein said. One of the things about North Carolina, our cities are not huge and they may be attractive to folks too. Last year's changes among the states were significant because population growth brings more taxpayers, economic dynamism, and demand for goods and services. In the next few years, domestic migration is going to play a larger role in the state's growth or population decline. That is because the Trump administration's immigration crackdown has contributed to a significant reduction of migration from abroad, which has been the prime driver of growth in most states for this half of the decade. Without immigration growth, the U.S. population will start shrinking in 5 years as death outpaces birth, according to Congressional Budget Office. Pandemic eases, boom eases. Despite the comparative year-over-year slowdown in domestic migration, Texas overall growth of 391,000 people and Florida overall growth of 196 people were still the two highest in the U.S. last year. In Florida, it was driven by international migration, in Texas by international migration as well as births outpacing deaths. Both states boomed during early parts of the decade when the pandemic-era lockdowns and remote area work encouraged residents from other states to move to Florida and Texas. Demographers in Florida and Texas said they were not entirely sold on the accuracy of the Census Bureau's migration numbers, which are hardest variables to pin down because they fluctuate year to year, and they did not question the rigor of the Bureau's work. The Bureau uses data from the IRS and American Community Survey to calculate migration, although the ACS data lags by a year that requires statisticians to project the data forward. There are no definitive explanations for why domestic migration in Florida went from 319,000 people in 2022 to 22,500 people in 2025. Doty said that some factors might include the state no longer being the bargain it once was, a series of hurricanes and return to office employee mandates. The cost of housing in particular is driving young people and retirees to other states, he said. Also, insurance is higher in Florida than most other states. When asked about the decline, Governor Ron DeSantis' press secretary Molly Best noted the email that Florida had a significant influx of new residents during the pandemic. It remains a top-ranked place to live, she said. Texas' economy has been growing, but it is not the only thing that influences the inflow of potential migrants. Conditions outside the state also do, Texas state demographer Lloyd Potter said in an email. Now let's ask Eric. Sibling resent retired parents for their cluttered home. Dear Eric, my parents are retired and enjoying the empty nest stage of life. They have a rather large home, and my mom's mobility has been severely hampered in the last few years. They refuse to get rid of things that no longer serve them. My mother overbuys for everything, and at times I think she forgets that they already have but just buys more, never cleaning out what she has already does. My siblings and I are growing extremely frustrated as there are rooms in the house that are no longer able to be moved through or overrun with stuff from decades ago. We've offered to help clean the areas out. We've offered to hire professional organizers to get in the home in order to create a safe environment to help. They refuse all help. We've also explained to them that we do not believe it's fair that they are going to leave this large home of stuff for us to clean up one day, not knowing what may be important to an heirloom, and they tell us to just throw it away. We love our parents dearly, but we're also extremely frustrated on how cavalier they seem to be when it comes to putting the burden of cleaning all this on us when they are gone, and when we are then happy to help now. We're happy to help now. Your thoughts would be deeply appreciated. Overwhelmed by clutter. You're overwhelmed. If you believe that this clutter in the house poses a safety risk and they refuse your help, it might be time to reach out to a hoarder task force at your local fire department to seek out other municipal resources to pay your parents a house call. They can assess the risk to your parents and any paramedics or firefighters who might have to come into the house to help provide solutions. There's a separate issue here, however. It's the anticipatory frustration that may not really be something your parents need to deal with. You're envisioning how hard it's going to be to clean up after them, which is understandable from a logistical standpoint, but they're still living their life. This is still their stuff, so it's really not fair to characterize them as cavalier about what happens after they're gone when they're still here and enjoying post-retirement life. Dear Eric, about a year ago, a good friend lost her mother at an advanced age. 6 months later, she lost her brother rather suddenly to cancer. We've been friends for decades and now are both retired. We've seen each other through everything. Each mom was a huge challenge. Her mom was a huge challenge. Uncooperative, unsupportive, critical. My friend is everything. Her mom was not. When her mom was going downhill physically, my friend was taking care of her. During all this, I was a sounding board for my friend, every detail, every procedure, argument. Same when her brother passed. I was more than glad to be there for her. Unfortunately, not long after her brother passed, her cousin's wife passed. And at the same time, I lost a good friend. It was especially hard. By the time the cousin passed, I was full up. I know grieving takes time. With everyone is different. When I resisted any more minute details about the cousin, I was told I wasn't a good friend. Am I really a bad friend because I just do not want every detail again? I miss you, but I don't miss walking on eggshells every conversation. Eggshells. Dear eggshells, you both run under a lot of stress and also grieving. It's easy and common in those moments to say the wrong thing or take some things the wrong way. We have to give each other grace. It's also reasonable and healthy to know that you're at emotional capacity. Sometimes we have to find the right words for it, like, I want to be there for you, and I understand that this is hard, but some of the details are overwhelming for me. Is there not another way I can help, or can we revisit this later? It's also fine to say you're not going through it, I'm going through it. I don't have much to give right now, and maybe you don't either. But can we just sit with each other? If we can, let's experience the water under. Let's experience, but be water under the bridge. Reach out to your friend. Tell her you miss her. Ask her if you and she can start again. Now let's look at sports. First, let's do a time check. We'll continue now reading from the Buffalo News on Niagara Radio Reading Service. The time is 30 minutes after the hour. Sabres right wing, Jack Quinn finds scoring touch pace on second line. Something about the second line combination of Jack Quinn, Jason Zucker, and Ryan McLeod continues to pop chemistry-wise. There's the biggest beneficiary of late, Quinn, a right wing who entered the weekend on a 4-game point streak, which included the 3-assist game Thursday and a 4-1 win at Los Angeles. They make the players around them better, Quinn said. Me being a bit of a shooter, and getting open pockets and shoot with them helps a lot because they're always able to make those kind of plays. Quinn, 24, became a second-line staple for the Sabres, who host Montreal on Saturday at KBank Center. He played right wing on the Sabres second line with Zucker, left wing, and McLeod at center in 22 of the last 23 games. Where Jack's been skating, with little connection there is with McLeod and Zucker right now, he's skating really well, Sabres coach Lindy Ruff said. The Sabres selected Quinn, number 8, in the first round of the 2020 NHL draft. His path to the NHL wasn't like others. He didn't solely concentrate on hockey as he grew up Cub in Ontario. He played several sports, including baseball and golf. He played for the Ottawa 67s of the Ontario Hockey League, including a 52-goal season with the 67s in the COVID-19 shortened 2019-2020 season, but wasn't fully surefire NHL prospect or even an OHL prospect. Quinn got serious about training for hockey when he was 15 while playing for the Canada Lasers midget AAA team. Even when the 67s drafted him in 2017, he didn't immediately join the OHL team. He spent one more season with the Lasers before joining the 67s full-time for the 2018-2019 season. He knew it would all translate to the NHL, even the times he got cut from teams. It was good, the adversity, Quinn said. I didn't make the AAA teams growing up, and it was probably good for my mental resilience. You can always keep working on your game, and you can always get better. Now in his 4th NHL season, Quinn has 12 goals, including 4 game-winning goals and 22 assists in 53 games. He's 5 points away from his career best totals of 39 points set in 74 games last season, and is refining his footing on the second line that can operate and produce in all situations. Zucker, a 15-season NHL veteran, maximized his 34 games this season. He's 13 goals and 14 assists, including 6 power play goals and 3 game-winning goals, despite missing 19 games due to injuries and illness. McLeod is both a playmaker and a face-off specialist with 11 goals and 26 assists. He's 46.5% on face-off in 53 games. McLeod is also a plus 18 and is tied with Los Angeles' Joel Armia for the NHL's best 4 shorthanded goals. Both of them are great passers, Quinn said. Ryan kind of drives the play a little bit up the middle, and the speed he carries the puck with on our line. Jason really on the inside and wins a lot of battles, really good around the net. Injury updates. Josh Norris, Jacob Bryson, and Jordan Greenway took part in the morning skate Saturday, but it was unlikely they would immediately return to the Sabres lineup. Ruff said they're taking a day-to-day approach with Norris, a center who is one of the Sabres face-off specialists. The plan for Norris is to practice Sunday morning for the Sabres to keep evaluating to see where they at. Approach it day by day, Ruff said. It's a great step getting him back. First day with the team, getting to practice tomorrow, keep evaluating and see where you're at. Norris sustained an injury to his ribs January 14th against Philadelphia and was placed on injury reserve January 19th. There's a possibility he could return before the Olympic break, which begins February 6th. The Sabres play Monday at Florida, Tuesday at Tampa, and host Pittsburgh on Thursday. We've talked about both situations, Norris said. If you're ready to go, you're not going to sit out. When I feel like I'm 100%, I'm going to play. Bryson sustained an oblique injury in a 4-2 win January 22nd at Montreal and hasn't played in the past 3 games prior to Saturday's games against Montreal, but Ruff upgraded the defenseman to day-to-day earlier this week. It's kind of day-to-day to see how I feel, Bryson said. It was placed on injury reserve January 23rd. Ruff said Saturday that Bryson would be available for games at Florida or Tampa. Greenway also skated Sunday morning, and Ruff said the wing has a possibility to play Saturday against the Canadiens, but it would be a game-time decision. Greenway has missed the last 3 games while managing recovery from off-season hernia surgery. In local basketball, Canisius falls in overtime to Marist. Canisius men's basketball nearly defeated Marist in regulation. However, Marist last-second alley-oop forced overtime before the Red Foxes beat the Golden Griffs 88-86 Friday night at the Kessler Athletic Center. Canisius lost its 5th straight game, falling to 8-13, 3-7 in the Metro Atlantic Conference. Brian Naja led 5 Griffs in double figures with 21 points. Marist 14-7, 8-4 in the MAC. He had 3 players score at least 20 points. Rajon Blackwell, who scored 20 points, tied the game at 73 with 2 seconds left in regulation. Inbounder Elijah Lewis, who also scored 20 points, threw in an alley-oop to Blackwell, who finished the assist with the layup. In overtime, Blackwell's 3-pointer gave Marist an 83-80 lead with a minute and 25 left. The Red Foxes would not relinquish the lead. They led by 6 with 12 seconds left before the Griffs scored the next 4 points in the game's final seconds. Cahill Singleton scored 20 points for Canisius. Javante Edwards scored 17, shot 4 for 8 from the 3-point range and handed out 5 assists. Mike Ivbagaru added 11 points and Miles Wilmoth netted 10. Naja added 9 rebounds and 4 assists and a block. Justin Menard led Marist with 22 points. Lewis added 9 rebounds and 5 assists. Canisius hosts Siena at 1 p.m. on Sunday. NU loses another close game. Niagara men's basketball team lost their 3rd straight game by 3 points or less during an 82-79 defeat to Siena. The game doubled as Niagara University's coaches versus cancer contest at the Gallagher Center. Niagara fell to 5-16, 2-9 in the MAC. They're on a 4-game skid since beating Canisius January 14th. Hosea Sabino led all Canisius players in double figures with 19 points, 7 of 8 field goals. Sabino fouled out after playing 22 minutes. Landon Williams scored 18 points, 7 of 9 from the field. Justin Hawkins and Vice Zanke each added 16 points. Hawkins dished out 8 assists. Zanke made 4 threes. The Purple Eagles outperformed Siena at the 3-point line, 14-6. The visiting Saints, however, outshot the hosts from the free throw line. Siena made 20 of 23 free throws, while Niagara was 7 of 13. Justin Schultz led Siena 15-7, 8-3 in the MAC, with 25.6 assists. Gavin Doty had 23 points, 8 rebounds, and 4 assists. He's one of the best guards in the league, Siena coach Jerry McNamara said of Schultz. I know I'm thankful to have him. We're getting big-time guard play. Obviously, Justice and Doty, they're playing well for us. I thought Christian Jones had a great second half for us. He really hit 2 big threes. Continuing along on sports, Blanc gives Crans Montana event home winner. Moving her arms like a conductor, Swiss skier Mallory Blanc stood in the leader box and enjoyed singing and waving flags by her home crowd in the stands. Blanc gave Crans Montana something to cheer about a month after the fatal fire in a bar by winning the last Women's World Cup race before the Milan Cortina Olympics on Saturday, with Lindsey Vonn sitting out the Super G a day after hurting her left knee in a downhill crash. The result gave the toned-down event in Valais Canton a fitting winner, with Blanc being from nearby Aent, which is a 20-minute drive from Crans, Montana. I'm so happy I could deliver this show. It's really a gift that people for the people in their sports, said the 22-year-old Blanc, Junior World Super G champion in 2024, who was second in downhill in Austria a year ago for her only previous World Cup podium. Blanc edged out 2018 Olympic downhill champion Sofia Goggia by 8.18 seconds, with Breezy Johnson coming at 0.36 seconds in third in Vaughn's teammates' first career Super G podium. Hosting the last pre-Olympic races in the wake of New Year's Day tragedy that killed 40 people and injured 116, Crans Montana stayed clear of the usual festivities at ski venues like public bib draws and concerts. The finish area was stripped of its usual vibrant color and advertising, which was replaced by white and black signs mourning that read, "Our thoughts are with you," in multiple languages. I'm sure that it would put me under pressure, but I tried to see it as positive pressure, Blanc said about her skiing at the home race under circumstances. I tried to focus on my skiing. I've heard that people at the start pushed me. I'm really happy that I've done it. Runner-up Goggia, wearing a black armband like those the whole Italian team did, also acknowledged it was not easy for her to race in the Swiss resort. The thought of the drama that has accompanied me throughout this month, knowing that I have to compete in this very location, Goggia said. This week, the Italian team visited the scene of the fire and laid a bouquet of flowers on the steps of the bar. As for my race, I have to say that I'm satisfied, Goggia said. January has never been an easy month for me, and ending up on the podium is the best way to present myself for the Olympics. Satisfied with how Johnson felt after her maiden Super G podium to 8 top 3 results in downhill, the Americans won the World Downhill title last year, but is yet to win a World Cup. I've been working on it for a really long time. I respect Super G. I think it's the hardest event. I always wanted to be good at it, Johnson said. A late starter with bib 29, Johnson bumped Roberto Melissi off the podium after the heralded Italian initially led the race and hoped for her first career top 3 result, having had just one top 10 in more than 8 seasons in the World Cup circuit. Friday's downhill was called after Vaughn became the third out of the first 6 starters to crash and visibly worsen with the increasing snowfall. One of the other skiers who crashed, Marte Mansen of Norway, wrote on Instagram she suffered a concussion after hitting the nets just before the finish area. Weather vastly improved overnight, though. Saturday's Super G took place in sunshine under blue skies, making a smoother snow surface for the Mount Lanchol course after numerous bumps and flat slides made the downhill tricky. Starting 20th after my first preface favorites, Laura Perevino led by a massive 0.58 seconds at the final checkpoint, but the Italian missed the penultimate gate in the twisty bottom section approaching the finish. Teammate Federica Brignoni made her comeback with a speed race and finished 1.28 seconds off the lead in 18th after the overall world champion placed 6th in the giant slalom nearly 2 weeks ago, which is her first event comeback after surgery. Emma Aker, the winner of the previous Super G in Italy 2 weeks ago, fell and slid on the course after posting the fastest split time, but the German skied down to the finish area and seemed to have avoided injury. French skier Laura Gauche had a nasty crash after crossing the finish line and got stuck under an inflatable safety barrier, but she seemed unhurt. The race was only the 4th Super G of the season after a race in Austria was canceled 3 weeks ago and rescheduled for Andorra shortly after the Olympics. With Vaughn not racing, Goggia extended her lead in the season standings to 60 points. Alison Robinson of New Zealand, who placed 6th on Saturday. Vaughn dropped to 3rd and trailed the Italian by 90 points with 4 races remaining. Continuing in sports, let's take a look at the Bills mailbag. Welcome to this week's Bills mailbag. Let's get right to your questions. Mike K asks, what do you think of Joe Brady in the cold light of day? Honestly, if you were making the decision, just never love that he crushed the interview. Last 2 seasons are the interview. He's tarred as much as anyone. If we are being bold and embracing change, then go for it. Jay, my first reaction was a surprise. Brady was a key part of the coaching staff the past 3 seasons, but hasn't been able to get the team over the hump. In those 3 seasons, the offense has had the ball in the fourth quarter or overtime of each elimination game and failed to score either tying or goal-ahead points. He is to take a large share of that responsibility. I'm a firm believer that the offensive coordinator in every NFL city is an easy target for criticism. Anytime a play backfires, it's easy to point the finger at the person who called it. Brady was no different in 2025. The more I think about the hire, though, the more I understand the thinking behind it. The reality is making sure Josh Allen is on board with the plan is the most important factor in anything that happens within the organization. Allen believes in Brady. The love that Brady has for his players absolutely came across in Thursday's news conference. That alone won't win games, but at least offensively, the Bills should be brought in right from the start. Brady did well Thursday. His emotion was real. That love that he has for his family and his players is genuine. He was gracious in talking about his time with Coach McDermott. Of course, none of that will matter come September. For now, judging this hire is like grading a draft class immediately after the picks are made. We can have our opinions on whether these picks were good or not, and if Brady is the right guy, but any definitive answers won't come until the games start to count. Richard Mark asks, the Bills were 1 player away from the Super Bowl. Michael Hecht brought energy and rushing skills that were lost when he got injured. McDermott did his best coaching job ever this year, and when you take into consideration all the injuries, Jordan Hancock, Darnell Savage, how far down the depth chart were these 2 players? Now the Bills are the laughingstock of the AFC as they have to rebuild. How many free agents won't resign due to the firing of McDermott? He was a player's coach, and he never lost the locker room. The team played hard for him. Allen was in tears because he lost the game with his turnovers, not McDermott. I would have traded Allen before considering firing McDermott. Clearly, Bills fans are going through it right now, Jay said. It's been a tough couple of weeks, starting with the loss of Denver. I'm all for letting people vent the mailbag, but the idea of trading Allen is one that's a bit over the top. The quarterback does deserve a significant share of the blame for what happened against the Broncos, more than I feel he's been getting. He simply has to take better care of the football. The fumble at the end of the first half that cost the Bills 3 points absolutely should never have happened. I know a lot of people think the offense could have just taken a knee and gone into halftime, but I didn't have a problem with running a play. Maybe you draw a pass interference penalty and get into field goal range. It was worth a shot. In that situation, the coaching staff put trust in Allen, and that it would take care of the football, and he simply didn't. Allen missed throws that if he makes, the Bills probably win the game in regulation. Even with that being the case, he's the most important asset in the organization. There's no chance I'd trade him. Some of what you said about McDermott is true. He never lost the locker room. He did do a good job, especially considered all the injuries on defense. He's a good coach, good man, and the decisions to move on from him were painful for a lot of fans. I understand all of that well. That doesn't mean I think free agents will leave because of it. Free agency in the NFL is mostly about players getting paid, which is what they should be given short shelf life for their careers. After that, for most of them, it's about finding a team that gives them a chance to win. The Bills will still be that team, mostly because of Allen. Gary asks, do you know if the new Bills coach, Joe Brady, has the authority to demand an overhaul in the strength training and conditioning staff? Every week this past season, the Bills' injury list was about 5 times longer than the opponent. It became a joke among fans, except nobody was laughing. Players were getting injured in practice, even while rehabbing another injury. Setting aside the cliche that all teams have injuries, do you think a new training staff is a realistic possibility? Brandon Beane's new title of President of Football Operations means the strength and conditioning staff reports to him, the same as the strength and conditioning staff. I saw Will Greenberg, the team's head strength and conditioning coach, at Brady's introductory news conference Thursday, so he was probably still on at that point. I'll be interested to ask Beane at the next scouting combine next month about the conclusions the team came away about why so many players were pretty hurt pretty much all season. Obviously, luck plays a factor, but for an organization that prioritizes sports science the way the Bills do, I feel it's been just beyond. It was beyond just luck. To answer the question, my read on Brady would suggest a change, but Beane ultimately oversees that department. Internal hires usually don't succeed. Can Brady and the Bills defy history? A finalist emerged last week in the Buffalo Bills coaching search. General Manager and President of Football Operations Brandon Beane reflected on a series of moments more than 2 years ago that strengthened Joe Brady's case. Sean McDermott's decision to fire Ken Dorsey and promote Brady from quarterbacks coach to interim offensive coordinator in November of 2023 left Buffalo with only 4 days to prepare for the New York Jets. There was no time for Brady to install a new offense, but changes were necessary. He also had to quickly build relationships and trust with every player in the group. The Bills scored 32 points that week and averaged 27 points as they won 6 of their last 7 games to qualify for the playoffs. The resolve and effectiveness Brady showed under the difficult circumstances were among the reasons that he was Beane's choice to replace McDermott as coach. While he can't do wholesale changes to the offense, he brought things that were not about X's and O's to the group, Beane said. Thursday, reflecting on the qualities, convinced him Brady would make a challenging transition from assistant to a head coach. The attitude, communication, the energy. You always felt that practice, different energy that when Joe took over the offense. Brady became the youngest head coach in the NFL when he signed a 5-year contract to take over a team that will have Super Bowl expectations as long as Josh Allen is the Bills quarterback. Brady's only 36 years old. He's never been a head coach at any level. His defense will need to be rebuilt. There will be a turnover across the staff, and his roster history shows the odds are stacked against him and the Bills. Internal promotions rarely produce results. From 2006 to 2024, 21 coaches were promoted from assistant role to take over the team with whom they're employed previously for the previous season. Their combined record and winning percentage was 360 and 472, 432. 11 lasted fewer than 3 seasons. Only one, Jim Caldwell of the Indianapolis Colts, reached the Super Bowl, and he accomplished the feat during his first season. 3 remained on the job for more than 3 seasons. 5 had experience as an NFL coach. None of these coaches had Allen, the NFL's MVP for the 2024 season, nor did they have the league's rushing champion in James Cook. Brady has had a hand in both remarkable campaigns. Most of those assistant coaches stepped into a terrible situation with the dysfunctional ownership, depleted rosters, and no franchise quarterback. Brady acknowledged during an impressive press conference Thursday he was gifted the foundation built by McDermott during the 9th season as coach. Beane will need to work on the roster this offseason, but Buffalo has more talent than the past examples. Of the 21 coaches, Caldwell is the only one whose credentials are like those that helped Brady beat out other candidates for the Bills job. Bill Polian, the Colts general manager from 1998 to 2009, decided before Tony Dungy's retirement to tab Caldwell as a head coaching in waiting. Caldwell had been on the staff of Peyton Manning's position coach for 7 seasons. The offensive players adored Caldwell. They understood them. He understood them, and he brought a new energy and accountability. Caldwell, however, had one quality Brady lacks: head coaching experience. Caldwell led Wake Forest for 8 seasons prior to his move to the NFL. Jim was a known quantity, Pulley explained during a phone interview with the Buffalo News. That was the key. Everybody knew who he was, and what he stood for, how he coached, particularly on offense. He didn't change as the head coach. He was very firm with all positions he coached previously. It was a seamless transition, and we had such a cohesive group. We were already exposed to and partly a lot of decisions that an assistant coach would have been. The expectations and pressure were immense in 2009 when Caldwell replaced Dungy, who retired 2 years earlier. The Colts beat the Bears in the Super Bowl. In the Super Bowl, Manning was 32 years old, and there was ample talent around him. During his first season, Caldwell led the Colts to 14-2, first place in the AFC South. They advanced to the Super Bowl with wins over the Ravens and the Jets. New Orleans won the game 31-17. In Caldwell's second season, the Colts finished 10-6 and lost to Baltimore in a wild card game. His third season got derailed before it ever began, as Manning had surgery on his neck May of 2011. Without its franchise quarterback, Indianapolis went 2-14. Jim Irsay, the owner, elected to fire Caldwell and hire someone else to coach their incoming rookie quarterback, Andrew Luck. Jim had no control over that polling and added, "That was just fate. Sometimes you're dealt a bad hand." He did a terrific job. Now let's take a look at the scoreboard. In the NHL on Friday, Columbus beat the Chicago Blackhawks 4-2. Saturday's games, Los Angeles at Philadelphia, Colorado at Detroit, New York Rangers at Pittsburgh, San Jose at Calgary, Winnipeg at Florida, Carolina at Washington, Columbus at St. Louis, Montreal at Buffalo, Nashville at the Islanders, New Jersey at Ottawa, Toronto at Vancouver, Dallas at Utah, Minnesota at Edmonton, and Seattle at Las Vegas. In the NBA on Friday night, the LA Lakers beat Washington 142-111. New Orleans beat Memphis 114-106. Boston topped Sacramento 112-93. The New York Knicks beat the Trailblazers 127-97. Orlando 130, Toronto 120, Denver 122, LA Clippers 109, Phoenix 126, Cleveland 113, Brooklyn 109, Utah 99, Detroit 131, Golden State 124. Saturday's game, San Antonio at Charlotte, Atlanta at Indiana, New Orleans at Philadelphia, Chicago at Miami, Minnesota at Memphis, and Dallas is at Houston. Let's take a look at the college scoreboard now. Top 25, number 3, Michigan, 83. Number 7, Michigan State, 71. Number 21, St. Louis, 102. Dayton, 71. In the East, Columbia, 72. Pennsylvania, 67. Cornell, 87. Princeton, 64. Fairfield topped Iona, 71-70. Harvard 69, Brown 59, Manhattan 95, Rider 90, Marist 88, Canisius 86 in overtime, Sacred Heart 98, Quinnipiac 91, St. Peter 66, Mount St. Mary's 58, Siena beat Niagara 82-79, Villanova topped Providence 87-73, Yale 83, Dartmouth 68. In the South, Charlotte 80, Rice 70, Georgia Southern 79, Louisiana Monroe 76, VCU 89, Loyola Chicago 75. Midwest, Akron 69, Kent State 52. Cleveland State 89, Green Bay 82, Detroit Mercy 90, Northern Kentucky 77, Michigan 83, Michigan State 71, Wright State 76, Milwaukee 69, Youngstown State 85, IU of Indianapolis 76, Far West, Grand Canyon 86, Boise State 69. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for February 1st. We read from the Buffalo News on the weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast it at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your reader today has been Ron Bickelman. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have a reading of Buffalo Magazine. Following that at noon is the Sunday Gusto. And at 1 o'clock is the Sunday front section of the New York Times. Stay with us for these readings and more. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision,